Greetings! War is ugly. That's a message Star Wars has always tried to convey to its audience, and one the Clone Wars in particular embodied. Billions of civilians lost their lives, numerous planets were rendered inhospitable and barren, and scars that never quite heal were left behind across the galaxy. As much as war is ugly for the innocents caught up in it, it's hell for those actively fighting in it. Throughout the Clone Wars, the Republic's forces had to face down millions of battle droids on some incredibly difficult terrain. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at what we consider to be the 3 most difficult, inhospitable terrains that Republic organic forces ever had to fight on.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
To long-time viewers, our first pick will come as no surprise. Jabiim, a small world out in the Outer Rim, was the location of a horrific battle during the Clone Wars that made Republic troopers' life hell. Although small, Jabiim became a huge thorn in the Republic's side during the war. It was a world rich in ores and minerals, which made it rather important to the war effort. However, its loyalist government wasn't as secure as the Republic wanted to think it was. A militant separatist faction, led by Alto Stratus, the Jabiimi nationalists, eventually staged a coup in 22 BBY and forced the loyalists out, many of whom had to go into hiding. Unwilling to lose the mining world, the Republic sent forces to secure the planet. This, it turns out, was a disaster, and most of that was due to Jabiim's weather and consequently its terrain. The weather above Jabiim was almost always stormy, with violent storms that unleashed near torrential rains down upon the world. Even when it wasn't pouring, it was drizzling. The clouds only broke for a few minutes, a few times a year, and to make matters worse, the constant storms had strong electromagnetic properties that made repulsor lift vehicles unreliable on Jabiim. As a consequence of all the rain, the ground was severely waterlogged, turned into a muddy sludge that made walking through it incredibly difficult, even for vehicles like the Republic AT-AT, AT-TE, and so on. To add insult to injury, the storms made just flying through the clouds dangerous, cutting off air support. Republic ground troops learned all of this the hard way when they made Planet 4 at Shelter Base. In the beginning, even despite the harsh conditions, public forces made some ground against Stratus and his forces. Stratus, you see, was only employing native warriors and local equipment at this stage, keeping his vast separatist droid forces back. As a result, during this initial push, the Republic managed to take a dozen outposts in about as many days. But when Republic forces were stretched thin across all this ground, Stratus moved on Shelter Base, dealing heavy damage to the Republic's headquarters on the planet. His forces were equipped with specialized tools to navigate the swampy terrain, such as repulsor boots, which made it easy for them to maneuver around Republic troopers. This attack was made worse by the fact that many of the Republic's walkers got stuck in the mud during the battle and were thus significantly less effective. And since all of this was taking place during a violent storm, the Republic couldn't call down air support. While the Republic managed to repel Stratus's forces, they suffered heavy casualties in the process. The Republic launched several counterattacks, securing a victory on the Razor Coast, but failed to apprehend Stratus, and they continued to suffer staggering casualties, including an attack on a convoy headed to Cobalt Station. This convoy, escorted by Anakin Skywalker, eventually reached its destination despite suffering heavy losses, but by that point, all senior Jedi on the planet were dead and Republic forces were in disarray. This is where the Republic called a retreat. However, this was easier said than done. Stratus and his army, which had reached numbers upwards of 10,000, were bearing down on Cobalt Station, the last Republic position protecting the evacuation point on Monsoon Mesa to the station's south. Additionally, with the storms returning, Republic ships couldn't come down to pick up the evacuating troops and loyalist forces for several days. Faced with this dilemma, the Padawan-led troops at Cobalt Station made a last stand, buying the rest of the army time to make an escape while sacrificing themselves. Even then, of the 3 Republic transports that attempted to land, only 1 succeeded. The Republic had to choose between evacuating the clone troopers or the local loyalist forces. In the end, they chose the clones, leading to further radicalization of the locals. In the end, within 43 days, the Republic lost well over 9,000 clone troopers and over 22 Jedi. Our second choice is a bit more obscure, if less so to connoisseurs of our channel. A planet that, although once beautiful, was rendered a lifeless husk. Of course, we're talking about Atrakan. This small world had the unfortunate luck of being rich in dunium, which was coveted by both sides. Early on in the war, it was conquered by the CIS, which the Republic couldn't allow, so in 22 BBY, they tried taking the planet back. For months, the battle was a bloody stalemate, and the tide only turned when the Republic began a series of strikes called Operation Katabatic. These attacks left Atrakan a bombed, desolate world. Many civilians were killed, and both loyalist and separatist troops suffered. When the CIS realized they were losing the battle, they went for the poisoned well tactic, unleashing a biochemical plague into the planet's water table, which killed 90% of the population and whatever life had survived the relentless bombings. The chemicals soon entered the air, poisoning anything that hadn't already died. Of all the planets to fight on, a cold, barren husk is not our top pick, and we're sure the Republic forces stationed there did not have a good time. But our last pick for this list is vastly different to the ones we've already described, and for many of you, we're sure it might be a surprise. When we talk about hellscapes, we're fairly sure not many people imagine Coruscant. Now, to be fair, we've spoken at length about how awful the city could be, especially once you went down to the lower levels. But this video isn't about how terrible of a place Coruscant was to live in if you weren't affluent. This is about fighting conditions, and in our opinion, few places were as horrifically difficult to fight in as Coruscant City. We're sure many of you know about the Battle of Coruscant in 19 BBY. This battle took place during the Outer Rim sieges, when the Republic had seemingly driven the Separatists into the Outer Rim. It was then that General Grievous led a massive and unprecedented assault on Coruscant itself, with the ulterior motive of capturing the Chancellor. From orbit above the galactic capital, Grievous's fleet destroyed the Coruscant Home Defense Fleet, raining debris down upon the planet. Meanwhile, Grievous and tens of thousands of battle droids descended to the planet's surface, wreaking havoc. For a moment, we'd like you to close your eyes and imagine being a Republic soldier on Coruscant that day. Whether you're a clone or a member of the local defense force, you felt safe. Coruscant was untouchable, after all. You were in the heart of the Republic. Everything was going well. And then, the sky was on fire. Chunks of metal are falling from the sky, smashing into skyscrapers. Burning hunks crash down on walkways, with civilians fleeting and screaming. Vulture droids deliberately start flying into buildings and skylanes. And then, millions of droids march through the streets, burning, killing, and destroying as they go. Coruscant is in flames, and you, the trooper, have to fight on top of levels that threaten to collapse the ones below, defending the trillions of civilians that are panicking and dying all around you, while skyscrapers around you collapse. The thing about worlds like Jabim and Hoth and Atrakan is that they're remote and very far away. The average Republic soldier didn't really care about these worlds. They were never home, and on many of these worlds, they fought in open territory. No matter how awful the terrain was, they never had as much to lose as they did that day on Coruscant, where the pillars of Republic society were literally crumbling before their eyes, and these unprepared soldiers had to figure out how to save as much as they could while their world collapsed around them. And even when they managed to fight back, they had to try and not do the enemy's work for them. They had civilians to avoid hitting and buildings they didn't want to destroy. No matter how hostile a world might be, we're certain any Republic soldier would have chosen it over Coruscant any day, any time, because the hardest terrain of all is one you can't afford to lose. But, of course, that's just our take on things. The galaxy was full of incredibly inhospitable worlds, and during the various wars the Republic fought in, they had to deal with a great deal of them. What's your favorite, or maybe better worded, most dreaded hellhole they ever had to deal with? Should we make a part 2? We'll definitely consider it if there are interesting hellholes that have sufficient information. Feel free to let us know your picks in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.